Since the durability update, Kled has received nothing but buff, 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 buff. Despite that, his win rate sits down here at a mere 50% with a 34th highest pick rate. This is well below where Kled is balanced at a 51 to 52% win rate and a higher pick rate. Why is that? Why does Kled keep getting buffed, and despite it, he can't seem to get any stronger? Well, it's actually kind of obvious with two nerfs that he received. Now, the first nerf is fairly obvious. The second nerf is something of a comparative nerf. Let's talk about the first nerf. Riot wanted Kled to be balanced on being a counter pick. Because of this, they changed his Grievous Wounds into a, they added Grievous Wounds to his Q at 60%. When they added Grievous Wounds to his Q, and I'm trying to find that over here, they then nerfed his Q cooldown to 11 to 7. It used to be 9 to 7, they changed it to 11 to 7, and added a 60% Grievous Wounds. They called him a counter pick. He would counter healing champions and be balanced on that. Obviously, counter pick champions are terrible for the game, and I hate them completely, and they should never exist. Nonetheless, this is how Kled was balanced. Unfortunately, when they did the durability update, they brought his healing debuff down to 50% and then down to 40%. No longer having an early game 60% healing debuff, Kled was no longer a counter pick who could hard counter all these champions who go healing items and runes and stuff like that in the top lane. In addition, they've de-emphasized healing considerably. They've removed the Omnivamp rune. Most people are not going Gore Drinker anymore. Death's Dance has been pushed back into a lot of builds, and overall, we're just seeing much less healing in the game. So because of this, Kled doesn't use his healing debuff as much, and it's much weaker. In addition to that is a second nerf that a lot of people aren't really thinking about. Kled had the highest base health in the game by far. Kled had such high base health that I think it was like 600 more than every other champion. In addition to that, he had very, very high base armor. The issue we're seeing now is despite Kled's base health and his base armor being high, they're not that much higher than other champions who really should be squishy. And I think a lot of people did mention that when the durability update happened, that because Riot wasn't giving higher stats to certain sorry, that was just up there. Because Riot didn't emphasize and give super high stats to champions like Kled, but everyone got the same 20 armor, the same 300 HP, that Kled compared to Ashe, Kled used to have 1,000 more health, or I should say 900 more health. So Kled had, I think it was like 2,900 health to Ashe's 2,000. Well, Ashe now has 2,300. Kled used to have 100 armor to Kled's 80. She now has 104 to his 123. Although these numbers are obviously, both of them were just increased, the percent amount that Ashe got and other champions like Ashe is much higher. Ashe saw a 30% increase in her durability. Kled saw a mere 15 to 20% increase in his durability. Because of this, this actually comparatively nerfed Kled to a lot of other champions. That combined with the healing debuff nerf on his Q meant that yes, Kled can keep receiving buff after buff after buff. It's not actually doing much, and we're seeing that his pick rate and his win rate, despite these buffs, is actually slowly going down. But there is more to this even. What other issues is Kled running into since the durability update? That's right, itemization. Starting at his very first item, Doran's Shield has started to become renowned for basically being the best item in 90% of situations on most champions. Unfortunately, Kled still does better with Doran's Blade. With other champions' best options getting better and Kled's best option getting worse, the durability update has hurt him even on just getting into lane at level 1. Because people are tankier, Doran's Shield allows them to heal more because they stay alive longer, it's harder to burst people down, so Doran's Blade has been seeing a lot of people dropping it for Doran's Shield, and yet on Kled, Doran's Blade still remains his best. The crux of the issue here, the biggest issue, is Gore Drinker. Most other bruisers are moving on from Gore Drinker to better items, either Blade of the Ruined King or some sort of lethality build. And Kled, we can see nearly 50% of the time he is still choosing Gore Drinker. And since it still has good stats, we can see that Gore Drinker is still doing best on Kled. Whereas a lot of other bruisers are also trying out a Sunfire, Blade of the Ruined King type deal, Kled can't even make that work. If we look over here under 3 different bruisers, we can see that on Renekton, the Lethality or the Blade of the Ruined King are outperforming Gore Drinker. We can see on Set that Gore Drinker has fallen to a mere 18% pick rate, with Stridebreaker and Blade of the Ruined King vastly out picking it. Blade of the Ruined King have a vastly higher pick rate, and Stridebreaker having a higher pick rate and win rate. Even on Aatrox, we can see that Eclipse is surpassing Gore Drinker and has a higher pick rate as well. Of all the bruisers, very few of them are left with only Gore Drinker as their options. There's basically only Riven and Kled. The problem is whereas Riven is massively overstat, Kled isn't. He's not overstat and he can't really use this. If we go into build paths, we can see blatantly his highest win rate build path is Gore Drinker, Black Cleaver, Death Dance. This build is actually pretty old. Death Dance isn't a bad item per se, but a lot of champions are starting to go with more pure damage builds or more interesting builds. We can see that the Blade of the Ruined King Sunfire Titanic build is not outperforming the typical Gore Drinker build, so he can only sit on Gore Drinker, he can only use Gore Drinker, and it's doing okay for him, but it's not that amazing. Other champions have much more builds that they can do, many more things they can do. Kled doesn't, and I'll show you why his Eclipse build isn't outperforming Gore Drinker. I'll show you why Black Cleaver is not being outperformed by Titanic Hydra. I'll show you that in a second, but the point is the items for bruisers have been power creeped, and Kled can't utilize those new options as effectively as the older champions can. Are older champions? Well, Kled is one of the newer bruisers just because he's in season. You know what I mean? He can't use these new item builds like other champions can. So I've set up a target dummy here, and this target dummy has 1700 HP with 80 armor, which is about the stats of Ashe here. You can see Ashe has 1745 and 76 armor at level 13. So this target dummy is about as tanky as an Ashe. So can Kled's base combo kill it? Let's check. His base combo cannot actually kill this target dummy that would represent a level 13 base stats Ashe. So obviously that's not great. Now if we sell this and we go with the Titanic Hydra second, so now we have Gore Drinker, Titanic Hydra. We can see the last one did 1421 damage. Now can Kled do more damage? 1416. So actually we see even against a squishy target at present, Kled will do less damage with a Titanic Hydra compared to a Black Cleaver. In other words, none of Kled's 2 core builds can kill a squishy champion with no defensive items, no heal, no kiting, nothing. His 4 autos QE build cannot kill an opposing squishy champion. Now you might be wondering, what if you slot in the Eclipse? Okay, if you slot in the Eclipse and the Titanic Hydra, or I guess we should go with Eclipse and Black Cleaver. This would probably be his ideal best damage build. So that's fair. Let's try this one. This build still only comes out to 1547 damage, only doing a minor amount more damage than the Black Cleaver, in addition to having considerably less ability haste, healing, and HP, and will still be unable to one-shot your average level 13 squishy champion. Okay, I'll add this segment here addressing what I will know will be people talking about this. Yes, at level 13, Kled should reasonably be fed. He should be at 3 items. But the thing is, if he's on par and doesn't have 3 items, if he hasn't hard won his lane, if he got ganked, if he was just fighting a safe opponent, if he didn't manage to get fed, what this is showing is that he can't function as a champion anymore, as a assassin as he should be, and he can't actually kill squishies anymore. Something to consider is that Kled has no AoEs, He's very low team utility beyond his ultimate being able to kind of engage into the opposing team's front line, which is not as useful as you think it is. So because everything he does is single target, very low team utility, he needs the ability to kill people, which I'm showing you that unless he's fed, he will start to struggle against. In addition to that, we're showing that Kled needs to go with a high damage build even to get close to that. If Kled starts building defensively, his damage in comparison to his opponents will start falling off farther and farther. Now, I'm not saying that Kled needs to one-shot squishies. I'm just saying, again, for the third time, consider that this champion has very low utility, no AoE effects, and if even his single target isn't doing as good, then there's a problem. So even if Kled's base damage isn't that good, right, compared to a lot of other champions, even if he can struggle a little bit, he's very mobile, right? So he can always get into range, he can always kill squishies, right? But the problem with everything I just said is often what I'm saying isn't true. In addition to how his ultimate works, a lot of people don't really understand this one. If a squishy is over here and I ult here, his ultimate will always target the first enemy. You can try to E then through this enemy to get to your target, but then the recast is on the first target you hit. So if a tanky champion is in front of a squishy champion, Kled can really struggle to get back into range of that, I shouldn't say back, he can struggle to get into range of that squishy champion. Now I know what you're saying. Oh, but all he needs to do is hit a leash. All he needs to do is hit his Q on them and he'll eventually pull them. But the thing is with that, his Q, the tether range, gets smaller and smaller as time progresses. So in addition to often not being able to get into range, or maybe being able to only use his E to get into range of the squishy target once, if they're running away from him, the tether can break. But it gets even worse. With his cooldowns of 11 to 7, 11 to 5, 13 to 9, his abilities have a very long cooldown compared to your average champion. Compared to champions who can straight one-shot people like Renekton, Kled can't actually one-shot people. And his cooldowns are longer. So he has cooldowns just as long as Renekton, but he can't one-shot people. It gets worse, because here's one thing you don't even know. Kled's W does not go on cooldown until it finishes. This means even, and this is why I ranked his W up to rank 5, if I jump in at an enemy, and I jump in at the squishy, right? And I hit him, and then I get peeled a little bit, and my W is not going on cooldown until I complete and I hit all 4 hits. So if I hit 1, 2, 3 times, then I get, I can't get the 4th W off. Look at this cooldown. This is max rank 5 W with the supposed low 5-second cooldown. And look how long it takes to get this back. This is why a lot of people have figured that the loss of damage from going Gore Drinker and instead of Eclipse is just worth it, because actually Kled can't kill you in one combo and his cooldowns are so long that he can struggle to get back in there. In addition, there's some really weird stuff. It's hard to show in a pinch, but basically whether or not Kled's Q instantly breaks or you get a little bit of leeway with it is basically totally up to server tick rate. Sometimes it works properly and sometimes it doesn't. This actually also applies to his E. Jace can E, he can knock Kled away from him, so Kled can jump in at Jace, hit him with his E, right? Now if Jace knocks you away, sometimes you won't be able to E back in. And sometimes you can E back in from extremely ludicrous ranges. Do you see that? And that, the server tick rate alone on his Q and his E can often decide whether or not he gets a kill. This is ignoring any of his bugs. This is ignoring any of the issues with the champion like that. I'm just talking in a pure damage sense. We've gone over his damage and we've shown he cannot one-shot a squishy. We've gone over his cooldowns. We've shown that they're high and actually in a lot of ways they're very difficult to even use. And now we've shown that actually a lot of times it can just be random if you can even use your abilities again at all. So why is Kled bad? The comparative nerf to the base stat increase, the healing debuff on his Q being nerfed in addition to there being less healing in the game for him to even use it on, his items getting comparatively weaker to other items, his damage not keeping up with the durability update, which again would be fair if he had some utility to fall back on, which he doesn't have, his mobility actually lacking, and him being unable to apply his damage when he wants it as consistently as he can. And lastly, the fact that there are a lot of Kled bugs. There are more Kled bugs than I could possibly list in this video. I was considering showing some, but just trust me, there are a lot. There are a lot of Kled bugs. So, unfortunately, Kled is doomed to wander in mediocrity right now and just be a very, not bad, but just very mediocre average champion that brings nothing to the table that anyone actually wants to pick and to be on their team. Even for countering healing champions, there are other champions that will have more mobility or more sustained damage, and often the best way to counter a high healing champion is to just bring a high sustained damage champion that will just melt through their healing. Not to bring a low sustained damage champion like Kled and then bring a healing debuff, because your low sustained damage means that they'll have more time to heal through you. So I'm hoping that this video helped all of you get and understand why Kled is, well, let's just say he's not doing the best. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to leave a comment down below. Special thank you to my Patreon supporters. I love you guys. If you want to join my Patreon, you can find a link in the description. Joining me on Patreon supports me and helps make these videos, which are, I don't mind making these videos, but I also don't mind eating. Thank you to my YouTube members. You guys are amazing, and I appreciate you guys a lot. And as always, it's just a special thank you to anyone who makes it to the end of these videos. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.